JSP stands for Java scripting pages, Java server pages. JSP, it stands for Java server pages. Now, the Java server pages, the purpose of the Java server pages is to embed the dynamic content in the HTML. So, your Java server pages consists of Java plus HTML, where HTML represents the static content and the dynamic content is represented with the help of Java. There are various ways in which you can include the Java code in your JSP page. The first what we have is scriptlets. So we have to embed the Java code in the JSP page. We make use of scriptlets. This is called a scripting element. Scripting element will help you to embed the Java code in the JSP page, which we have already using. And then you have got expression tag. This also we have used. This is called as expression tag. This expression tag is equivalent to out.println of servlet. And then you have got declaration tag. So this declaration tag is equivalent to declaring a variable at the class as a class level resource. This is equivalent to this one, public class ABC extends HTTP servlet. So this declaration tag will become a class level resource or an instance variable, and whatever code you are writing inside the scriptlets. Let's say you are writing some code. Integer A is, let's say you're writing the logic for addition. Simple. Integer B is equal to 20 and then integer C is equal to A plus B. And then C is equal to plus C. Let's say this is what you are writing. So if you're writing this code, that is scriptlet code, what you have to do is you have got service method public void do service. So all the code what you are writing inside the scriptlet as well as the expression tag. So this code will go inside the service method. So the code what we have written in the scriptlets will go inside service method. This is how it works. And then let's say okay, you're writing this expression tag. Sorry, over here let's say you're printing this way, Tommy. So this will be converted into this. And again, this expression tag also goes inside scriptlets. So this is how it works. Now, what happens over here is, let's say this is your JSP page. The above one is your JSP page. abcc.jsp. abcc.jsp page. So this JSP page will get converted into scriptlet. So you have got this abcc.jsp page. So this abcc page will get converted into, sorry, will get converted into the servlet. Now let us try that. We have already done. Let me show you which one, this one I can. Let me run this. because this is index underscore one. It is a JSP page. The execution of the servlet take place in two steps. One is translation, second one is compilation. Execution of the servlet take place in two phases. One is translation and the second phase is called as compilation. So in the translation phase, what happens is your JSP page, index.jsp page, will be translated into index.java. That is, the container will translate index.jsp page to index.java. This is how it works. So over here you have this code. So if you observe this, right click and then view servlet. So this is your JSP. So your servlet is translated into, sorry, JSP page is translated into the Java code, .java code. And if you see over here, you have got this service method. We don't translate, this translation is done by the container. You have got this code underscore say service method. So whatever code you are writing in the JSP page is inserted into the service method. So if you see over here, we have got two forms. See, login, form action. So are we clear on this? Is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
So this one, the Java file that you're showing, it's automatically done internally, right? Like this is just for our reference. We are viewing it.
Yes, it is automatically done by the container. This is translated to this index1.jsp. As we said, the execution will take place in two phases. One is translation, second one is compilation. In the translation phase, index underscore one.jsp is translated into this index underscore 1005f1 underscore jsp.java. As you said, we are not doing this. This is being done by the container. And the next, as usual, compilation. After translation is done, then you have got compilation. Then it will load the class. What is this name? Index. So index underscore something, whatever it is, dot Java. It is loaded into the container. Then it creates the object. Creates the object. And after the object has been created, then as usual it calls the init method, then it calls the service method, and then it calls the destroy method. This is how it works. First, index is loaded, then it creates the object, then it calls the init method, then it calls the service method, and finally it calls. This is the life cycle of JSP page. Now let us work on that. Okay, now I'll be using this marks.servlet. Let me run this.
Adhika, why will what is called translate JSP page into servlet?
We don't translate, it is done by the container.
Right, but why we need to do that?
The reason we do is because over here you are writing two codes. One is HTML code and then again you write the Java code. So the processing of the scriptlets, whatever we are writing, the processing of the scriptlet, this has to be done by the container underscore request scope dot error. This has to be done by the container. So when you're writing this $request scope dot error, you are just writing request scope dot error, but the logic to execute is with the container. And the container it is written, okay, the container, okay, you cannot make the container understand various language. So the logic for that is written in the Java. The logic for executing JSP pages is written in Java, the runtime engine. The JSP engine, what we call, is written is capable of executing this Java code. So if you observe over here Java x.servlet.jsp. Now if you observe over here index underscore 05 005 it is extending the HTTP JSP page. So by this what we understand is the logic for processing the JSP pages by the JSP engine. It is written by extending these classes. So it is obvious your container will not understand this code. Your container cannot execute this code because it cannot. There is a lot of background processing that has to be done for this request scope dot error. So what it does it to make the container understand the JSP engine, first it translates your .jsp page to the Java code because your JSP engine is supposed to process the Java stuff, the .java file, .class file it can process. So it will map that, and if you observe over here, see over here if you see, when you're writing the request scope dot whatever attribute error, so this is all the processing for this request scope dot error evaluate the expression, because what you have written is just request scope dot error. There is a lot of internal processing that has to go in the background by the container, by the engine. So you are evaluating this java.lang.string.class, and then the attribute is there at the page scope at the page level. Check it for this particular page, and then okay, if it is nothing, okay, just if you don't have any value, then it is returning null. So again, it will invoke these runtime libraries. The container will invoke this runtime libraries in order to evaluate that expression. So the code for processing is written in, now if you see over here, this is the code. This is the code that is written for processing. This is the compiled code. Now this code is written with the help of Java language. So this engine is written. Are we clear on this?
Yes.
When it is returning the when it is running the JSP page on the client, so what is being sent from the server actually? After evaluation, it sends it, or client will make one more request to how it is getting loaded in the browser side.
The way it is loaded in the browser side is because, as we have already discussed, the communication is HTML over HTTP. So whatever you are sending, it is HTML over HTTP. So if you see this, what is this? This page you have received it from the server side. This page we have received it from the server side. So now
Yeah.
let us type in chat John John at the rate 123. Your browser can just understand only HTML. That is the reason we say HTML is the native language of the web. So whatever processing is done, it is done in the server side. So if you see this, control U. So what it is sending? It is sending all HTML. Even though it is an error page, it is HTML response.
Mm.
So that is what we say. It will send HTML or HTTP. So this is the HTML stuff that is sent using HTTP protocol. All processing will be done at the server side itself. Your server will send HTML over HTTP. That is, it will send the response in the form of HTML using HTTP protocol.
Okay.
I think I might have deleted this. Hmm.
I think it's because of the session timeout that we have set. I think last in the last class, I think we have set it to some 5 seconds or something like that. And
Let me check it whether that is there or it has been deleted. Oh, name is not there.
mm,
So let me execute this. Username or password is invalid. If you see this, so if you see again the sending what, it is sending all HTML content,
mm,
and there you have written username as invalid as request scope. Over here you have written it as request scope dot error. This you have written request scope
mm,
dot error. But if you see over
mm,
here what it is sending,
that
username
was
or
error
password
message.
is invalid.
Mm,
So that is what we say HTML over HTTP. So all the processing request scope dot error, the processing of that is done at the server side. So your web server will send HTML over HTTP. So it will convert that into HTTP and send it. So this processing will be done by your JSP engine. Are we clear on this? Because HTML it understands web browser it understands HTML, and that is the reason it is called as native language. So all the processing of the data that has been sent by the server to the client will be done at the server side. Then it will be embedded in the response object, and then it is sent as HTML over HTTP. When it is sending HTTP response, within the HTTP response object, all this will be embedded. Any questions?
mm.
Hassan, is it clear?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Now, let us discuss data access object. Now, under data access object, it is quite simple. Now, so far, what we have been doing is we have written a servlet and we have written a JSP. So, some login servlet we have written, and then you have got some JSP. Now, what you have over here is where is that class.for login? Yes. So this is the code we have written. So, in this, if you observe, what are you doing is you're writing two things. One is your business logic, and the other one is the database access logic. So this is one we have written, and the other one again what you have is one more servlet. If you're writing, we have got one more servlet that is And then okay, you have got another this thing. So you have got two servlets. So what are you doing is this database access logic, the class.for name what you are writing over here. Anyway, business logic will vary. But if we have observed, if you observe, I'll just copy up to here. Sorry. So these are the set of statements that are being repeated. So if you see over here, database access logic. This is something and this is something. So this stuff it is being repeated in all the classes. You don't have any option. What are we doing is we are just writing it. In all the classes we are repeating this. Now what I want to do is I want to separate this data access logic. I want to separate this code. So if you want to separate this code, so what I do is because your servlet it is a controller element. The servlet it is a controller element. So as of now what we have done is your business logic, you have written it in the same servlet as well as the data access logic also you have written in the same servlet. So what you will do is you will create a separate class. Its whole purpose is to interact with the database. You create a separate class and its whole purpose is to interact with the database. So this class job is to interact with the database. So what we will be doing is so so what do you do is this core you will just remove this logic to access the database from the servlets and you will put it into a separate class. And then what happens is, so rather than you writing the code, complete code, you will just create a reference to this class. From your servlet, you need to call this. Clear on this? So if you're putting
Yes.
the database code into a separate class, and the whole purpose of that class is to interact with the database, you have to move the code, the data access logic code, out of servlet from the separate class. This class is called as DAO classes, or this pattern is called as DAO pattern, data access pattern, DAO. DAO pattern. This is called.
Only the connection part will be there in DAO, or suppose say the same table is being accessed, so like retrieving the records will also be placed in
Yes,
DAO.
yes. As you said, complete. All the access related, all the logic related to accessing the database. Complete stuff.
Okay.
You have to put
Okay.
it into a separate class. So this is called as DAO pattern, data access object pattern. Are we clear on this?
Yeah.
The DAO class is an interface or just inheritance type, like a
No, no,
super
no.
class or
It is a normal Pojo class. You can create an interface and then you can implement it. The standard is first you need to create an interface and then you need to implement it.
okay.
Standard is to create an interface and then you need to implement. So over here, what we will be doing is new. We need to create a package called DAO, data access object. So in this, as you said, the standard way, let me do it. Repository you will create. What is that? Validation or authentication. Authentication repository. Now, once you do this, so what all you have? Public void. We need to check. So this one is username and password. public void validate. I'll just do for one string username comma password. And then what you have to do is, rather than writing the code over here, you need to copy this code, the complete code. From oh shit, what I did. So this code you need to copy, cut and paste. That's it. I'll first copy and then comment it. So let me change this to user and this to password. Surround block. Instead of boolean, sorry, instead of void, you return the boolean value. And what happened? I think we need to enclose this with it. If rs dot next true, return true, otherwise it should return false. And then and rest of the cases false. So over here, what you will be doing is, from here you need to make a copy. So what is this authentication repository? You can make this as a static method. Validate string user and then password. So the result that is returned is boolean, and then this line you need to change. Result, this one is done. So this is how you do it. So you'll create a separate class, the Java code, sorry, the code to access the database, we'll place it in the separate class. And that class we call it as the. The reason we do is because it promotes reusability. You can reuse that code at many places. Clear with this?
Yeah.
Okay, now what we will do is, now let us implement JSP page. We'll write a JSP page to get all the information about the employee. Right click new JSP EMP. View all the employees. Now over here you will write the information to get all the employees. You can keep a button ahref is equal to view employees. You need to write a separate called view employees. That is, if you click on that, it should give you this link. or else you can write the complete code here itself. Now, your employee, what all it has? Name, pass, repass, date of birth, and email. So you will create a model for this. Password, I knew it should not be there. New Java class employee. So over here, to just get the details of the employees, what you have is private. We are making use of beans. This is your bean. Private integer, name, password you should not keep, email, list, let us have a look. Name, password, date of birth, email. Sorry, name, email. The rest of the fields we should not, because password we don't present it. So constructor, now you have got this class called employee. Now what you have is, when you're clicking on this, click over here, you need to create a servlet called view servlet. Sorry, view EM. Add this. So this is your controller element. Insert. So this is the controller element. This is your view EM. This is your servlet. Now it is obvious that this request is coming from the web page. So when this request comes from this web page, it hits this. So now this view EMP servlet, what it should do is it should connect to some of the service method. That is, it will connect to your class, DAO class. You need to write a class called view EMP DAO. So this view EMP DAO, by the name itself, it should connect to the database and it should retrieve all the employee details. We have got this view EMP. It should connect to the database and then it should get all the details. So once it gets all the details, it should connect to the database and it should get all the details. So when it gets the details, it will return the control back to view EMP server. So which is the step one? This one is step one. Your request is going. So this is the third one. This is the first one, view EMP servlet. This is view EMP DAO, and this is it is connecting to the database. This is the third step. Now, after it has connected to the database, it should return the results. That is, for each row return, for each row return, it should create the object. So let's say it is returning these values. So what does your object contains? Name, one is name, the second one is date of birth, third one is email. Let's say you are retrieving the information of some XYZ kind. Let's say you are retrieving Okay, some XYZ information. So this object, it will return it back to this server. Clear up to you?
Yeah. Yes.
Now let us drag the code up to there. So you've got this view EMP. It should return the employee. So let us delete all this. Uh, because it is link, it has to be do get. For link, it is always do get. Remove this code. Before we, well, now you need to call this view empdao. So let us create that class view empdao. Now when you're creating this class, public void view emp. So you can pass the employee name and it should get you the complete information. So I'll not be writing the class.forName stuff. I'll just copy it from here. Now, once you're done with this, result set rs is equal to pst dot execute query. Import. So if rs dot next, you need to create which object you need to create over here. Okay, you have to create an employee object. And to this employee object, you have to pass these three arguments. So name and then DOB and then email. So rs dot get string of name, comma rs dot get string of uh, DOB and then rs dot get string of email. You need to write a convenience constructor that will return all this. So rather than you need to change this query, select name, comma, dob, comma, email from register because our table name is register and instead of username, its name is equal to question mark. Import the required object.
Artika, here we are constructing the employee object, right? Suppose here, like we are retrieving only three different fields from the DB. Suppose if it is a long list of no, database fields that we are retrieving, how would I create that object in order to return it to the servlet?
If you're using JSP, this is the only technique what we have. But if in case if you're going with the other technologies, let's say string and all, then you don't have to do that. We have got direct methods. We have got ORM, Hibernate architecture, object relation mapping that will already automatically
Oh,
do the task.
Oh, okay.
If you're using JSP, you don't have any other choice other than typing it. But in order
Mm.
to overcome this problem, many ORM architectures have been introduced in the market, that is object and relational mapping. So that
Mm.
will be using, that will be covering in Hibernate. So if you're doing this, then this is the, sorry, if you are developing
Okay.
this way, then this is the only choice you have. Named UOB. Provide an argument constructor for your convenience. So this is what does that, the employee object you have created, and this you will return it. Return E. So you are returning this back to the server. So this is the model you have, and then this you will return this to your server. If you don't find, if return. So you go back to view emp.jsp. So from here you should retrieve what? You should retrieve the name from the request code. Request.get parameter of username. After you have retrieved the username from the request code, then what you will be doing is you need to make a request to view empdao dot. Let us make this method as static because it is not dependent on any of the class objects. View emp and then pass the string name. Now, and import the model. Now, once you are done with this, you have reached this point. Now, this is your business logic, whatever you are writing. Controller is containing your logic, and the data to access the logic from the database, we have moved it to a separate class. Now, once you have done this, then you have to present this information to the user. You have to present this information, whatever information you have over here in these fields, you have to present that information to the user. So in order to present this information to the user, you will share this object in the request code. You will share this object in the request code. Let's say you have got Hassan, and then email what you have is, let's say, h@ something Gmail, and then date of birth, let's say you have got something 124. Let me reduce the font size. Okay, so fine. Now what you have to do is, you've got this object. Let me group this as one unit. Now this object from here, when you say return of E, this object is returned to this servlet, right? Now this object is with this. Now this information, whatever you have got, it should be displayed. Now this information, this is the object. This information what we have, it should be sent to the JSP page. This information should be displayed by the JSP page. This information. So what you require one more page, that is view JSP. So you require another page. To display the details, you require another page. This is your JSP page. So this information, so the control now, it has to be transferred to this server. This is the last final step. So when this control has to be transferred to this servlet, when you're transferring the control, you have to transfer this object as well because it has to be accessed by the JSP page. So what do we do is, or it is obvious that is whenever you have to transfer the control, you can take help of which dispatcher? Request dispatcher. I can take help of request dispatcher. So when I say rd.forward, request, comma, response. So the request and the response object will be moved. So you have got two. One is request object. So what I'll be doing is before I forward the control, I will store this in the request code. I'll store your EMP object in the request code. Clear on this?
Yes.
So what I'll do is I'll store this object in the request code. So you have got this. So you're storing your object in the request code. So now when you're storing this object in the request scope and when you are forwarding the control request, when you're forwarding the control, so along with the request object, the data whatever is stored along with the request object, because when you say forward request comma response, so this data will be transferred. It will transfer these two objects. From here it will be transferred to this one. Now these objects, request and response objects, when this line number 5 is executed, this is over here. So now the control has been transferred. I'll just make this as a gray color.
Tika, to present the information, are we going to write a servlet or JSP?
To
And
present the
also another
information,
question
it
is,
is
how do we
always
decide?
JSP. That is JSP.
Uh, JSP.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, to render the information. Okay.
Yes. Now this is this stuff you have over here. Now your your JSP page will have access to this object under the name request. Your JSP page will have access to this object. Your JSP page will have access to this object. Clear with this? The name of this object is request. The black one what is being denoted. The name of that object is request.
Yes, yes, it is clear. It's a way to pass our data to the JSP. We are creating our own object and we are putting it in the request object so that it can
Yes.
be forwarded to the
Yes. So that it
another
can travel along.
JSP.
Clear on this? Now you will get access to this request object. Now the names of these fields is, now within the request object what you have is EMP. Within the request object the name what you are giving to this object is EMP. Just give me a minute. This is your request object. Let me place this at the corner. And this object inside is being referred by, let's say, EMP. And then the name that is given to this black stuff is request. So how do you access this? a request. And the name what you have for this one is name. Name. Property value what you have. And for this what you have is email. And for the last one what we have is DOB. Now when you have to access this, how do you access this? Request scope dot emp dot name. So this is your request scope, and because you're storing it in the request scope, and this is emp, and this one is your name. And then similarly, if you have to access this, request scope dot emp dot email, request scope dot emp dot dob. Clear on this?
Yeah, it's clear. Another question I have.
Hmm.
So, can't we place it in the response? I mean, I understand there should be some mechanism to access the response object also, right? So, why do we place it in the request?
Now the basic principle what we have is when you're sending
Ha-
information, it is always request.
Atika, you're not audible.
The basic principle what we have is whenever you are sending the information, it is request. Whenever you're
So,
sending the
why
information
I'm
from the
getting
client to the server, it is always request. Am I audible?
yeah, now you're audible. Whenever we are no, why I'm getting confused is this is processed information. So I'm just assuming processed and we're retrieving information from the database. So I'm getting confused at why this is not being placed in the response.
No, 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 no. Because over here, when you're sending the data, you have got four levels at which you can share the object. One is request, second one is session, and the third one is application. So the mechanism over here is when you are sharing the information, sending the response is always in the response object. But whereas whenever you are sharing the information, then it is in the request scope. You're sharing the information. So sharing the information is done at the request scope.
Yeah.
So in this scenario where we use the response object,
Now over here you are not using the response object. Over here if you have used the response object, then the response will get committed here itself. If I write out.println, finish, your request and response cycle is completed. Here the request and the response objects will be destroyed. You cannot do over here out.println, because when you do out.println, your request and the response cycle is completed and the container will destroy all your requests and the response object. So if you're using request dispatcher, then you are not supposed to do out.println. You will get the exception over here if you're doing this. So let me first store this at the request scope. Request dot set attribute of emp comma e, and then request dispatcher rd is equal to request dot get request dispatcher of view emp.jsp page, and then let me call rd.forward. Now, let us input all the required stuff, and after this let us write print writer out is equal to response dot get writer out dot. If you want, you can add it. But once you're writing this out.println, the response will be committed. So you will receive an exception message.
Oh, so in response object, whatever we place, it becomes a text. Only like objects or data that cannot be placed and shared by using the response object across the components.
I did not get your
Is
question.
that right?
No, no, I did not understand
Uh,
what you're
the
trying to
the
say.
the thing is, so whatever we are placing in the response object, it becomes a text. We cannot be sharing any objects or any data uh, across the components using the response object. That has to be done via request. Is that right?
Yes, yes,
Can
sharing
I
is
do
always.
response dot set attribute something like that? Like we are doing. I understood the part that where you are setting it in the request, but I clearly understood. But can I do the same thing in the response object resp dot
No,
set
no,
attribute of setting some attribute?
you cannot do that
Can
because if we don't have
we
the
cannot do that?
sharing is always done in this. So if you see over here, it is response.getHeader names, get output string, response.getWriter, committed, notify, send the error message. So you don't have any such stuff like that. So response is only for sending the data. If you want to share anything, then it is done either at the request scope, session scope, or at the context scope.
Okay.
If you see
Okay.
these methods, you don't have. We remove this code. So now after you do this, okay, after you have transferred this control to view emp.jsp page, okay, view we have written it as a small case. Now over here you can present the information $of. You're retrieving this data from the request scope dot emp dot what was that
Name.
name dob and email. It has to be exact. Name. This is called as EL expressions, expression language. $of request scope dot emp dot and then you can make it fancy by adding some color by putting it inside the table and all that I'm not doing. So let us run this page view underscore emp. Click. Okay, sorry, we need to create a form over here because we are retrieving some form parameter. Form action is equal to view emp. This is our servlet name and input type is equal to text. Name of the text field is username. And then let us write a button. Input type is equal to sum. This is your form. Let us run this. You don't get any data. Let us check the error. So if any errors are there, it will be available in this window. Okay. Table or view does not exist. So you go to this view empdao class. This is with schema. Okay, sorry, this one is now we have shifted our focus to HR schema. Let me change this to HR and then the password is HR. See, you are getting all the stuff, name, date of birth, and then the email. So this is called as model view and then the controller architecture. This is called as model view and then controller architecture. So this one will form your model. This is your model. This is the view. MVC stands for model view controller architecture. The stuff that represents the business data. This is model. This is your view that is responsible for presenting the business data, and this is the controller. So this is your controller. This is your model. Sorry, this is the JSP page. So this is view, and this one will become your model. Clear with this?
Yes.
So your controller will interact with the model. Model, it can be service or the class that represents the business data. So your controller will react with the model. Model, I repeat, it can be the service class or it can represent your business data. So this model will do all the processing and will create the object. And if you see, it is returning the object to this controller. This controller, it is setting the object in the request scope, and then it is forwarding this request to the view, model view, and then your controller architecture, MVC. So if you're making any changes to the business logic over here, it will not have any effect on your view. Let's say if I'm making any changes to the view, rather than displaying the data onto the single line, I want to present this data in the tabular format. So if I want to present the data in the tabular format, it will have effect only on this logic. Over here, I just have to implement the logic to display the data in the grid format, whereas this in this will not get affected, whereas your business logic and this one will not get affected. So there is a separation of concerns. Clear with this?
Yes.
There is a separation. If you are changing this, if you're just making changes to the view, you don't have to change the code that is there in the controller, neither you have to change the code that is responsible for accessing the database. You just have to change the view. Let's say if you are moving from one database to the another database, you are shifting from one database to the another database. Let's say you're moving to some database, other database. So in this case, your presentation logic will be affected or only this business logic will get affected. If you're switching from one database to the another database, you need to just make modifications in the model. In the service logic, you have to make the modification. Your controller and then the view element, this will not get affected. So if you are implementing this, then you will get the advantage of loose coupling. Loose coupling is a logic, or it is a frame, it is a logic, it is a OOPS concept wherein the components are not interdependent. That is, if you make change to the one component, you don't have to make change to the another component. So MVC, it supports model view, and it stands for model view and controller architecture, and it supports loose coupling. That is, if you are making changes to one part of the component, it will not have any ripple effect. You don't have to make changes to the other parts of the component. So is this clear, model view and the controller architecture?
Yes.
Hassan, Roma, and then Zahid, is it clear to you?
I think when we'll write the different condition like email has a at the rate of should be there, and if number field, then it should not accept letters or string characters. So
Okay.
this kind of condition we will write in front-end view or in the database?
Now look, you will write all those stuff at the front end, and using JavaScript you can do that. JavaScript is there, Ajax is there. Using these technologies, okay, you can write the front end scripting code. JavaScripting, you can go ahead with the JavaScript because all validations will be performed at the client side. So for client side validation, we use JavaScript.
And that will implement inside the JSP or separate?
JSP, because your JSP, it will support both HTML as well as Java code. So you will be writing that inside this. Inside JSP, you should not write inside controller. You should write it inside the JSP page. Is it clear?
Yes.
So if you want to learn JavaScripting, then you can just go through some tutorials which will help you learn how to write scripting code. For to learn the basics, you can go through day30schools.com.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. So with this, we have completed MVC and we have seen how to write the code over here. Let me just rest of the stuff. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow. JSTL, what is that? Yeah, JSTL we have to learn, and then another one is property B. So that we'll try to learn tomorrow. So this was MVC concept, model view, and then the controller architecture. Whenever you are designing the web pages, you have to implement both the patterns, MVC pattern and the DOO pattern. We need to club these two, MVC as well as DAO pattern. So with this, we'll wind up the session for today. Tomorrow we'll start with JSTL.